As the 1960s drew to a close, at a moment when the music world was undergoing one of the greatest transformations in its history, Paul McCartney was no longer particularly shaken by the sharp claws of music critics. Not because he was immune to public judgment, nor because his name had already become a symbol of pop perfection. The reason was far simpler and far more painful. Every song that emerged from the Beatles' recording studio first had to pass through a court far more ruthless than any press review: John Lennon's judgment. For McCartney, Lennon's opinion was the true barometer. If John liked a song, it meant the work possessed something authentic and honest. If he didn't, there would be no praise, no compromise, often only cold silence or a cutting remark. In many ways, Lennon was the most brutal critic McCartney ever had, and perhaps the only one whose opinion he genuinely cared about. From the very beginning, the Lennon-McCartney relationship was never an ordinary partnership. They were bound by something resembling brotherhood, a mixture of admiration, competition, jealousy, and unspoken affection. That bond existed on a thin line between solidarity and conflict, and it was precisely from that tension that the foundations of the Beatles' music were born. In the early years, the dynamic worked perfectly. Lennon brought lyrical sharpness and rebellious attitude, while McCartney contributed melodic instinct and classical structure. Together, they became an almost unmatched songwriting machine, creating music rooted in blues, rock and roll, and American pop, yet infused with an entirely new identity. But as the decade shifted and the Beatles began experimenting with psychedelic consciousness, drugs, and limitless artistic freedom, their creative directions slowly drifted apart. John Lennon sank deeper into political, cynical, and existential self-expression. His lyrics grew rawer, darker, and more confrontational, reflecting his inner unrest and his immersion in activism and the avant-garde alongside Yoko Ono. McCartney, meanwhile, moved in nearly the opposite direction: increasingly elegant melodies, influences from classical music and vaudeville, and a fascination with the beauty of song structure. These differences gradually eroded the harmony they once shared. McCartney once admitted bitterly that throughout their years together, Lennon had only ever complimented him directly once, a small confession that revealed just how cold their personal relationship had become by the final days of the Beatles. Respect still existed, but warmth had disappeared. Paul's cheerful, theatrical style began to irritate Lennon. In interviews following the band's breakup, Lennon openly criticized several McCartney songs that he felt were too light and disconnected from real life. Lovely Rita, Maxwell's Silver Hammer, and especially Obla Di Obla Da became prime targets. The latter was famously dismissed by Lennon as granny music, a phrase that would later come to symbolize the widening divide in their musical tastes. For Lennon, music was not merely entertainment. It had to speak truth, suffering, and the chaos of the world. In his mind, songs that sounded too bright felt like escape rather than resistance. For that reason, it seemed deeply ironic when one of McCartney's most majestic compositions, Let It Be, became one of the songs Lennon questioned most. Today, Let It Be is regarded as a spiritual masterpiece, a calming anthem for a generation that had lost its direction, and the symbolic closing chapter of the Beatles' journey. Yet, to Lennon, the song did not represent the band he knew at all. In an interview after the breakup, Lennon said with near despair, "What can you say? Nothing to do with the Beatles. It could have been Wings. I don't know what he's thinking when he writes Let It Be." To him, the song sounded like the beginning of McCartney's solo career, not the collective work of the band that once changed the world. Lennon even suspected that the song had been inspired by Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Waters, a gospel pop ballad that dominated global charts at the time. That's my feeling, although I have nothing to go on. I know he wanted to write a bridge over troubled waters. That suspicion reflected a deeper tension. Lennon felt McCartney was no longer writing for the Beatles, but for his own future. McCartney, however, had an entirely different story. He repeatedly explained that Let It Be was not born from commercial ambition or an attempt to imitate anyone. The song emerged from one of the most fragile periods of his life, when internal band conflict, business disputes, and emotional pressure left him deeply shaken. During that time, Paul dreamed of his mother, Mary McCartney, who had died of breast cancer when he was still a teenager. In the dream, she appeared calmly and reassured him that everything would be all right. So that got me writing the song Let It Be. I literally started off Mother Mary, which was her name, when I find myself in times of trouble. The song's opening line was not an intentional religious metaphor, but a direct reflection of grief and longing that had never fully healed. Nevertheless, the phrase Mother Mary quickly led listeners to associate the song with Christian symbolism. McCartney never objected to that interpretation. I'm quite happy if people want to use it to shore up their faith. I think it's a great thing to have faith of any sort, particularly in the world we live in. This is where the true magic of Let It Be lies. The song originates from an intensely personal experience, yet remains open to universal interpretation. It can be a prayer, a memory, a comfort, or simply a gentle voice amid the chaos of life. Musically, McCartney perfected the classical ballad form through gospel harmonies and a simple yet powerful chord progression. The calm piano, restrained lyrics, and repeating refrain create a meditative effect, an absolute contrast to the internal turmoil consuming the Beatles at the time. Perhaps that was what made Lennon feel alienated. The song contains no anger, voices no conflict, and makes no attempt to fight the world. It simply accepts. Let it be. To Lennon, such acceptance may have felt like surrender. And so, without anyone realizing it, the song that would become a symbol of peace transformed into the soundtrack of the greatest friendship collapse in popular music history. As the world found comfort within it, Lennon and McCartney drifted even further apart. Let It Be became a quiet yet unmistakable dividing line between the Beatles' past and a future they would no longer walk through together. And to this day, the song remains a reminder that even the most beautiful works of art can emerge from the deepest fractures. A song meant to soothe, yet one that forever preserved the moment when two friends who once wrote history together could no longer move in the same direction, either in music or in life.